Welcome to everyone. Thank you for coming to our memorial service and our remembrance for the founder of the White Plum Asanga, Taizan Maezumi Roshi. My name is Gyoto. I'm happy to be your host for this evening. I received Jukai from Maezumi Roshi in May of 1991. So I realized a few days ago that we're 30 years to the month, if not the day, that I received my Jukai from Maezumi Roshi. So I'm feeling very connected to the lineage and to all of you on this occasion. So we're broadcasting from Maitreya Abbey at the Great Mountain Zen Center in Berthoud, Colorado. This is the home center of Shishin and Shinko Roshis, who are my transmitting teachers. It's been 26 years by the calendar since Maezumi Roshi left this realm, but truly he remains with all of us in ways both subtle and overt, teachers and sanghas all around the world. It's very nice to see all of your faces. I don't see all of your faces, but I hope I will through the minutes ahead. I know some of you, many of you perhaps, and it's really good to be here in this room together. All of us are carrying on Maezumi Roshi's legacy. So we have, how many on the call now? 102 on the call, and we are recording the session. It'll be available to you in your sanghas shortly after today, shortly after the ceremony. Okay. So we have a wonderful group here, teachers and sanghas across really the spectrum of practice, monastics and lay practitioners, socially engaged Buddhists, this term that we use, lay practitioners, all growing from the roots that were laid down by Roshi over 50 years ago in Los Angeles. This is the second memorial that we're holding over Zoom. Ryoto Roshi led a wonderful memorial program last year in our first year of COVID, and being still in our COVID times, we're back online for this year. Maybe we'll be back in person next year. We shall see. But this does have the benefit of allowing a lot more people to attend the memorial service than usual. So it's great that we're able to come together like this. Thanks for your patience with this Zoom forum, though I suspect that all of you have a lot of facility with it at this point. If you do have technical issues, as I said, you can chat directly to Shoen and he'll help you. Our program for today will have a service for Maezumi Roshi. We'll do the heart service in, I'm sorry, the Heart Sutra in English, followed by the Enmeijuku Canon Gyo 9 times. Those will be that will be dedicated to White Plum Asanga members who have passed on. We'll have special mention in the dedication of the Enmeijuku Canon Gyo to Bruce Seiryu Blackman Roshi, who, as we all know, passed away on May 3rd, quite recently. I suspect everybody knows these chants by heart, but there is a link which Shoen can put into the chat to the GMZC liturgy for any perhaps Sangha members who might not have that the words down. We're going to begin the service with a food offering. Shishin and Shinko Roshis will be officiating the service. We'll begin with a food offering. Then there will be some Dharma words presented by Shishin and Shinko Roshis, and then we'll go into the Heart Sutra and then the Enmeijuku Kanen Gyo 9 times, like I said. Following the service, we'll have some comments, field notes from Egyoku Roshi, the 3rd abbot of ZCLA. Then we'll have a still film created by Peter Cunningham that he put together especially for this occasion. And Peter's here today. And after that, we'll invite open remembrances of Maezumi Roshi, and we'll finally conclude with the 4 vows. So the whole program will take perhaps 60 minutes, perhaps a little bit more. Okay. So at this point, we'll begin our service.
Dear Taizan Maezumi Roshi, this is the 26th year since you left this sphere in your career as a Zen pioneer.
Zen pioneer,
Some would say a racketeer
a racketeer,
or a puppeteer
a puppeteer,
that pulled the strings that gave us wings
gave us wings
to spread your Dharma seed and succeed with all speed to meet the endless need. Indeed,
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 indeed.
in the 50s, you came to LA to Zen Shuji as a Zen sensei. You knew Gaijin were okay to penetrate the Buddha way.
We Gaijin are okay to penetrate the Buddha way.
We came from near and far away, and some did stay and some did stray. But we did nothing halfway, including sake and Japanese buffet.
Sake and Japanese buffet.
Poco a poco, you would say. To that we responded, ole, ole.
Ole, ole.
Every day is a good day. Not risque, not blasé.
Not risque, not blasé.
We would pray for no delay to manifest the Buddha way.
Manifest the Buddha way.
The leaves of the white plum tree have multiplied abundantly, more than you could even foresee. This is your legacy.
We are your legacy.
Many rascals who are free
to
adapt your teachings to our native land, but please don't misunderstand. Since you did disappear, we've shed many a tear.
Many a tear.
But we will persevere. And to be perfectly clear, we will always revere and cheer your sincere phrase, appreciate your life.
Appreciate your life.
To your own life, be true. At first, we had no clue how to make do. It was all so new.
It was all so new.
But after years of moo, we grokked your view. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you anew. For now, I do.
I do.
I do.
I do.
Mahaprajna Paramita Heart Sutra. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva doing Viprajna Paramita clearly saw emptiness of all the five conditions, thus completely consciousness, no ignorance, and no end to ignorance, no old age and death, and no end to old age and death, no suffering, no cause of suffering, no extinguishing of path, no wisdom, and no gain, and thus the Bodhisattva lives Prajnaparamita with no hindrance in the mind, no hindrance, therefore no fear for beyond deluded thoughts. This is nirvana, all past, present, and future Buddhas live Prajnaparamita, therefore attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, therefore no Prajnaparamita is the great mantra, the vivid mantra, the best mantra, the unsurpassable mantra. It completely clears all pain. This is the truth, not a lie. So set forth the Prajnaparamita mantra, set forth this mantra, and say Gate, Gate, Para, Gate, Parsam, Gate, Bodhisattva, Prajna Sutra. The pure Dharmakaya neither appears nor disappears, and yet the vows of great compassion seem to come and go. In solemn contemplation, we clearly see that life and death do interpenetrate, like we see that summer and winter shift position through the year. When life comes, it comes like thunder, echoing across the boundless sky. When it leaves like the waves amidst the vastness of the empty sea. On the 26th year since his passing, we recognize that Hakuyu Taizan Maezumi has left this life in accord with the causations of his karma, and his realization of the impermanence of all things has made his final resting place nirvana. May his life and death be like the mirror of wisdom, showing us all realities as they are. In offering sweet water, cake, and tea, we dedicate the merits of this service to his true nature with deepest gratitude. We devoutly aspire to true compassion. In bearing witness to the life and death of Maezumi Roshi, may penetrating light dispel the darkness of ignorance. Let all karma be wiped out and the mind flower bloom in eternal spring. May we ascend to the throne of enlightenment and realize the Buddha way together. All Buddhas throughout space and time. All Bodhisattva Mahasattvas Mahaprajna Paramita Enme Jiku Kanangyo Anze Om Namu Butsuyo Butsulu Enyo Butsulu Enbu Posto Enjo Rakugajo Choden Kanze Anbonen Kanze Onen Jushin Kinen Furishin Kanze On Namu Butsuyo Butsulu Enyo Butsulu Enbu Posto Enjo Rakugajo Choden Kanze Anbonen Kanze Onen Jushin Kinen Furishin Kanze On Namu Butsuyo Butsulu Enyo Butsulu Enbu Posto Enjo Rakugajo Choden Kanze Anbonen Kanze Onen Jushin Kinen Furishin Kanze On Namu Butsuyo Butsulu Enyo Butsulu Enbu Posto Enjo Rakugajo Choden Kanze Anbonen Kanze Onen Jushin Kinen Furishin Kanze On Namu Butsuyo Butsulu Enyo Butsulu Enbu Posto Enjo Rakugajo Choden Kanze Anbonen Kanze Onen Jushin Kinen Furishin Kanze On Namu kanze on namu butsuyo butsu en yo butsu en bupo so en jo rakugajo shonen kanze on bonen kanze on en jushin kinen en burishin kanze on namu butsuyo butsu en yo butsu en bupo so en jo rakugajo shonen kanze on bonen kanze on en jushin kinen en burishin kanze on namu butsuyo butsu en yo butsu en bupo so en jo rakugajo shonen kanze on bonen kanze on en jushin kinen en burishin. Vast ocean of dazzling light, marked by the waves of life and death, the tranquil passage of great calm embodies the form of new and old, coming and going. We devoutly aspire to true compassion. In reciting the Enmei Jiku Kanengyo, we dedicate its merits to Bruce Seryu Blackman on this, the 11th day of his passing, and to Margaret Nieka Baragato, Stefano Mui Baragato, Madeline Coy Bastis, Charlotte Joko Beck, Raul Atsubai Berge, Malroja Gio Brownick, Rosemary Mayoan Dougherty, John Shoto Flat, Bernie Tetsugan Glassman, Pia Jinji Jaeger, Lex Shikai Hickson, Sandra Jishu Holmes, Anjo Corin Kosman, Phil Sengetsu Coleman, Robert Soken Lee, John Dido Laurie, Peter Murray Matheson, Sidney Musai Walter. With deepest gratitude, may the Udambara bloom and bring the spring of enlightenment. The bright sun of wisdom shines forever, banishing the dark night of ignorance. All Buddhas throughout space and time, all Bodhisattva, Mahasattvas, Maharaja,
You gonna spotlight me? Let's see. Replace spotlight. There we go. thank you to Roshi Shishin and Roshi Shinko for leading our service and expressing their Dharma words. So next we will have Egyoku Roshi express some of what she was terming field notes from the third abbot. We can find Egyoku Roshi, and if you can unmute,
I'm
we will find
unmuted.
you. Okay, for the spotlight. So it's all yours, Roshi.
Thank you. Oh, I feel so sad right now, listening to all the names of our fellow sangha teachers who have passed. Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. It's warm greetings to all of you. It's amazing to see like 109 screens. We make a mala, and what a mala we make. And Shishin and Shinko, that was a wrap. I'll tell you, that was wonderful. So thank you to Shishin, Shinko, Ryodo, Gyodo for organizing this 26th memorial of Maezumi Roshis. It's just amazing. So I'm Egyoku, and this morning I'm in Los Angeles at the Zen Center of Los Angeles, Maezumi Roshi's home temple. And Shishin invited me to give some kind of remembrance about my time as the third abbot at Maezumi Roshi's home temple. And before I could say, really commit to it, he published it. So here I am. And you know, it's not easy to think about 20 years, as many of you know. You have been abbots of your temples for quite a while. So Maezumi Roshi's home temple is located on Tongva land, the unceded Tongva land of the Gabrielino Tongva tribe. And yesterday I attended a panel on the Tongva people with the Tongva elders, and they completely endorsed these land acknowledgements, and they want us to go further, and they want their land back where it's possible for their ceremonies and meeting places, which are now denied to them. So that was very powerful to think about, having this temple on this land. I think of ZCLA as sort of a seed repository for the White Plum. And in fact, all of our temples and our groups are these repositories of seeds for the White Plum lineage. And it's exciting to think about how they will grow, which ones will die and which ones will grow, and what they're all going to look like. It's exciting. So what I thought I would share this morning, not from my 20 years, but from the first few years, my experience of Maezumi Roshi after he died, and the first few years after I returned to ZCLA in 1997, when Maezumi Roshi was most present to me. It was almost as though he compelled me to clean up the karma, so to speak, of ZCLA, and to make sure that ZCLA did not perish. So it's this time that I want to talk about. So Maezumi Roshi, as we know, often said to us, what lives on is the vow. And his vows are clearly living on in all of us. And I do want to acknowledge all the hard work over many, many, many years that all of you have put in, founding your own centers, guiding your own groups, and all the range of activity of the White Plum Asanga, which gives it a very special flavor. And I know some of you are now considering who takes over your temples. So that's a pretty poignant thing to consider. But there seems to be life in these temples after we die. So that's a hopeful thing. Maezumi Roshi's brothers told us that when a Zen teacher dies, we don't say he died or she died or they died. We say the teacher has gone to another place to teach. And that's a pretty scary thought when I remember just how hard Maezumi Roshi worked. And I hope he's got a really good gig now. So I don't know about this other place, but I remember at the evening before Maezumi Roshi's memorial in Los Angeles in 1995, we held a tea offering in the garden, and Suzuki Kakuzen Roshi, who was a very close colleague of Maezumi Roshi's in Japan, gave his remembrances about Maezumi Roshi. And at the very end, he gave this exhortation to Maezumi Roshi. And he said, please now get some rest. That just stuck in my head. So I don't know if Maezumi Roshi is resting, but it was certainly not our time to rest. It's when, in many ways, a lot of our work began in earnest. I'm sure that many of you might remember the tremendous energy that was unleashed when Maezumi Roshi died. It's like his samadhi field just spread everywhere, just penetrated everywhere. And in our grief, we were held by this great energy. And I remember it so clearly. And my recollection was that we rode the waves of this energy. We Zen heirs of his, we rode the waves of this energy for almost a couple of years. And things seemed to unfold with a certain amount of ease. Bernie Roshi, became the second abbot of ZCLA. Maezumi Roshi had designated this in his will. And Bernie sensed that things were like a little too calm, or there was something under the calm. And every so often he would say to me, I'm waiting for the shoe to drop. And I would say, well, what shoe is that, Bernie? And sure enough, within 2 years of Maezumi Roshi's passing, ZCLA's resident teacher at the time became involved in a scandal, a smaller scale than the 1983 implosion, but it was no less devastating, coming on the heels of Maezumi Roshi's passing. So at that time, I was living in Yonkers, New York. I had gone to Yonkers to complete my studies with Roshi Bernie and to help him, as he would say, attend to the details of Maezumi Roshi's world, all the things that we have to attend to when someone passes. And Bernie asked me to return to ZCLA in the midst of this upheaval and told me, I want you to heal the sangha. I put that in quotes, heal the sangha. So it is now 24 years ago. It's 24 years when I really reluctantly returned to take this on, not because I felt that I could heal the sangha, but because I felt I owed it to Maezumi Roshi and to Roshi Bernie to try. And in fact, it's become a way, this has become a way to express my gratitude to two of these great teachers of mine. And I'm really honored to have spent so many years with them, absorbing their samadhi, absorbing their wisdom, absorbing their great heart. And some years before he died, Maezumi Roshi, just sort of out of the blue, said to me, your job, Egyoku, is to develop the Sangha treasure. And of course, I had no idea what he was talking about. But this direction from him began to take on a life of its own when I returned to ZCLA in 1997. So I said to Bernie, I'll return, but I have two conditions. One is that I'll be free to just try what I felt needed needed to be experimented with, and you will support me completely. And two, if it doesn't work out, then ZCLA will be in your hands again. So he agreed because, you know, we were at rock bottom. What choice did he have? So ZCLA had bottomed out. The plum tree was cut back to its roots again. And everything at the center really felt so precarious. You know, all the tumult and the hurts of the past and of the recent events that were happening then really demanded attention. And really everyone lived in a field of grief. It was so palpable, and it continued for a very long time. A few months after my return, it occurred to me that there were not Band-Aids big enough to patch ZCLA back together again. Band-Aids, bandages. There was nothing that could cover the wounds. And I recalled a conversation I had with Maezumi Roshi. I think it was sometime in the 1980s when I served as the Zen Center's chief administrator. It's what we called the position at the time. And I was fretting over the Zen Center's budget. And those of you who run temples know what that's like. And he looked at me and he said, Egyoku, if we have to let the center go, let it go. You can always build a Zen center someplace else. What's important is to take care of the people. So put the people at the center of the Zen center. That was an amazing wisdom. And I'm glad I remembered it when I did. Let the Zen center go. That was also an amazing, liberating wisdom. Just let it go. And so that's really what I did. I didn't try to save anything. And I always enjoyed it when Maezumi Roshi in his Teisho would say, it's just not necessary. Or you don't have to do it. You don't have to do that. It's not necessary, because he was referring to, you know, all the swirling going on in our minds. But somehow that took on a new life for me. It's not necessary. What's not necessary, right, in this situation that we found ourselves in at ZCLA at the time? Like, what's not necessary, right? The whole thing, the whole structures that had been created or brought over from Japan or created an idea about what Zen was and what a patriarchal Zen system is and all of that, just throw it out, not necessary. So let it go. And then what? Allow the space to emerge. And it really, those years really became about allowing the space to emerge. And space for what? Space for the Zen Center's suffering to play out. For the people's suffering to emerge and live itself out. Don't cover anything up, right? Let whatever needs to come to light, come to light. The space for care and discernment to arise. No one ever calls me, but they did now. So what was necessary to attend to? I say go cellular, go to the cellular level and beyond. And, you know, through it all, I learned that I could trust that what needed to be addressed could be addressed, and that the situation would arise, and what arose would be in everyone's best interests, not just for a few people. So in this way, and with this kind of attitude, we entered further into the portal of the rawness of ZCLA at that time. And the possibility, it held the possibility of some kind of transformation, although we had no idea what that would be or what that would look like. Would there be another incarnation for ZCLA? You know, you realize nothing's guaranteed in this impermanent world. One of the very first things we did, which I know a lot of you have also adopted and do, is the practice of counsel. And we still do that today. Counsel not as a problem-solving effort, but as a way for us to sit together, to speak our truths, to listen deeply to each other's truths, and to listen to what's arising in the field of our communities. And that is a very delicate and nuanced and complex practice. It's like the other arm of Zazen is how I think of it. And through that, we learn to weave the field of the Sangha, and so that we could be resilient and flexible and strong and unafraid of the tears in the fabric of community that inevitably happens. During the first several years of my return, we had 3 fires in the Inryo, which is the Maezumi Roshi's house. The abbot's house is called the Inryo. And in the largest fire, which was the second fire, the house itself caught fire. The first one was the yard caught fire because nobody had been able to water the grass. We were in such disarray. And a passerby flicked a cigarette into the grass and the whole thing went up in smoke. So the second fire happened in the house itself. So we were invaded by firemen and helicopters and news media, and it was really quite a scene. So after the fire was put out, the fire chief came to me and said, would you like to go back into the house now? You'll be amazed, you know, at how little damage there is or how little you lost. Well, there was nothing much in the house at that time anyway, but it was amazing when he led me through the house. The firemen had gone into every room, gathered everything in the room to the center of the room and covered it with heavy plastic in the middle of the whole fire. So finally we arrived to the second floor and we walked through Maezumi Roshi's bedroom, which was full of these big hunky firemen, all covered in soot with their little white eyes looking at me. And we walked into the sunroom, which is where the fire had started, in the heater on the wall of Maezumi Roshi's bedroom and the sunroom. And when I stood there with the fire chief, I felt that something really had been burned out of the house. It was amazing to feel that. And so I said to the fire chief, I said, I don't know how this is going to sound to you, but something is gone from this house, and that's a good thing. I didn't want him to think that, you know, I'd set the house on fire to enact a purification rite, but in fact, that's the purification rite is what actually had happened. And so he kind of looked, you know, with some sense of understanding, because I'm sure he's well acquainted with fires. But at that moment, Maezumi Roshi came to me. I just felt this great swirling energy, and he put himself right between the fire chief and me. And Maezumi Roshi said, Egyoku, forget about me. Do what you need to do here. So as someone said to me later, he empowered you. You know, just do what you need to do here. So that really freed me up a great deal to just deal with what we had to deal with. And at that time, what we had to deal with was really to face the shadow energies of ZCLA from its like very beginnings, right? The memories, the trauma, the suffering, the heartbreak, just the hardship on so many levels of those founding years. And all of which at the time really obscured, right, the richness of what had been planted there. So Maezumi Roshi's words to me was the spark, really, if I could use that word in the midst of a fire, the beginning of consciously creating what I call a culture of awakening that welcomed in all of the shadows and all of the memories of ZCLA. And why not welcome them in? Because they're already present in the field. So when people would ask me what my job was, I would say, my job is to hold space. I'm a space holder. Space for the shadows to arise and live themselves out, right? In our presence. Space for the collective consciousness to arise and to awaken. We were learning how to orient ourselves differently. You know, we all know that in the early years of these Zen centers, it was all about the individual. It was all about me, right? It was all about my awakening. So we learned to reorient ourselves. Yes, to the individual, the wholeness of the individual. And then we really started to look at, orient ourselves to the wholeness of each other, and then to the wholeness of the Zen center itself, whatever that was, or whatever that was wanting to be. And of course, it just goes outwards in concentric circles. So we were really sensing into really the space between us, right? If we can just imagine that, so that the space between us would be alive, living, generative, and life affirming. And it seems obvious now, but at the time, you know, it was hard to touch even the possibility of that. And we were sensing into not oversimplifying anything in the face of this greatly complex situation and dynamics that we were in. Right? Complexity, we know, can be so overwhelming that we often, like, you know, just dumb it down a bit. But we were learning to sense into that and just to let it be. It's fascinating because, you know, what I realized later, this is what we call the three treasures. And particularly the sangha treasure. So it took us about a dozen years to attend to the grief and the trauma of the Zen Center. And we painstakingly made space for it. We didn't just move on. We did our best to attend to the people, and people showed up, you know, from like many years ago. It's like, and wherever they had been, they showed up as they were when they left ZCLA. Plus we had the trauma at hand that we were dealing with. And we always ask, what do you need now to heal? What do you need now to heal? And people would tell us, and we would do that. And most of that ended up being carried out in rituals that we created for that healing. And to the community, to ourselves, we would ask, what is needed to restore us? Or what is needed to create us? Because we weren't sure what needed to be restored, right? It's more like what needs to be created. So an amazing confluence of events during those early years was the formation of the Zen Peacemaker Order by Bernie and Jishu. And it was a very rich time because they were also putting forth the wisdom of their many years of working in the way that they were working in social action. And that deep, deep Dharma ground that they both grew from. And so the juxtaposition of that effort, which a number of us were involved in, and what was being called for at ZCLA was very, very powerful in terms of determining how ZCLA evolved, because the situation called for not knowing, and it asked us to listen to what was in the field, not just listen to myself, listen to each other, listen to what was in the field, the energetic field of the Zen Center. And through that, we began to take these little steps, right, all along the way. And many seeds grew from that. Just to mention briefly, one of the things that grew out of that is we have a strong line of preceptors. The preceptor lineage is strong because we know we have to hold a strong ethical base here at ZCLA. And it resulted in us writing the Sangha Sutra a couple of years ago, which is really sets forth our Sangha culture and our practices. And we plan to add much more to it because it continues to evolve. And along the way, we created a practice that we called shared stewardship. And this was our attempt to develop the horizontal, right? We're so strong on this vertical, as we know, but the horizontal just did not match the strength of the vertical. So we were determined to create an equally strong horizontal dynamic in our Sangha. And so the shared stewardship model, which we experimented with and evolved, has now become a model of collective awakening, collective wisdom and awakening, which we're beginning to explore a lot more. And a couple of years ago, we created a 3 seats model so that one person, the abbot, is not responsible for everything. And so the 3 seats are the abbot, the head teacher, which is the seat I hold now, and the preceptor seat, which we have not yet filled. So this is very experimental and evolving, and we're learning from it. So Maezumi Roshi was very present to me during those early years of my return. And I know he was for many of you too. He appeared in your dreams and everything else from what I recall. He didn't appear in my dreams. He just appeared in my everyday reality. But in closing, I just want to say, several years after my return, I was preparing to hold Doksan in Maezumi Roshi's Doksan room. And after the attendant left to make the calls in the Zendo, Maezumi Roshi's energy filled the Doksan room. And he would appear from time to time. He would train me how to do Doksan. But that day, when he appeared, I said to him, Roshi, I'm going to be all right. You can go and rest now. And I hope he is resting, but I doubt it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Roshi Egyoku, for that rich sharing. So moving. Thank you. Okay, next we're going to move to our still film created by Peter Cunningham. And the screen share is going to be moving over to Showen's machine. And hopefully the audio and the video will both come through in high quality for you. I wanted to preface it by saying we hope to open up to remembrances after the still film, and we invite you to, if you were present at any of the photos, if you have a sharing that's a background or a backstory for any of the photos, that'll be a good prompt for some of the sharing afterwards. And if you have a reference to a specific one, perhaps for your sharing, we'll be able to go back and find it So we're hoping that there are some remembrances of that type. Thank you so much, Peter, for putting that still film together. I was watching some people's expressions as those images passed through, and there was a lot of emotion that I saw expressed. So at this point, we'd like to open it up for people to share any remembrances, perhaps prompted by some of the images there in the still film. I will say, as far as the video goes, Peter wants us to know that the credits for the photography are present on his website, and we'll be sending out the link to view that film on his website, so he can get some traffic there, and you can see some more of the credits and background perhaps over in his experience. A lot of rich material over there for those of you who don't know. So yes, at this point, I'd like to open it up, and we can please indicate if you have a share that you'd like to share. You can either raise your physical hand, or best, I think, will be the reactions widget down at the bottom of your screen, and raise your hand with that. And then we'll acknowledge you one at a time and turn your microphone on and spotlight you for a share. We'll try to keep our shares lean, and hopefully we can get a handful in the next 10 to 15 minutes, perhaps. And then we'll conclude with the 4 vows. So with that, we will open it up. Is there anyone who'd like to share? Jikyo and Kaigen. Okay. Oh, yes. So Jikyo and Kaigen, you can unmute yourself. There we go. Thank you.
What I wanted to share is I was especially touched by Maezumi Roshi's capacity to meet people where they were. And I never lived at the Zen Center. I'm his 11th successor. Never lived at the Zen Center, but came up and spent 15 years commuting and sat many long retreats, long seshins. And I was so, as I was watching the films, I was just remembering the spaciousness of his being able to meet. I was living at home, raising a family and working, how he could meet each one of us. And it was such a beautiful part of his beingness. It's what Egyoku was talking about with the space that he created, but that being able to meet and encourage practice wherever you were. So I wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jikyo. Does anyone else raise their hand? Okay. Okay, so please do go ahead and raise your hand, but before the next one jumps in, I'd like to go ahead and have share a remembrance myself. It was evoked by the spirit of the photos that I saw. I wasn't present for any of those, to the best of my ability to recollect. But there was something in the dignity of Maezumi Roshi as he held his space as a teacher and as a leader that really comes through, particularly in the more formal occasions. And I had an encounter with him in Dokusan, which some of the things that Roshi Egyoku was saying about the difficulty perhaps of being a teacher and having a tough gig, I think, and maybe having a softer gig now, perhaps, was echoing in me with this experience. I brought some real, I was in a place of real distress when I went to Dokusan with him, and it was just before my taking Jukai with him. And I had what was probably the longest Dokusan I ever had with him. It was 20 minutes or so, and I got to know him a lot deeper at that moment. But he somehow was able to just hold the space for me in a way that just completely recontextualized, what I was going through. And I was just very, very grateful, and I had softened up, and I was amazed at his ability to just be there for me in that way. He didn't know me very well. I'd only been a resident for less than a year. And I with tears in my eyes, I looked at him at the end and I said, it must be really great to be a Zen master because of what he had and was able to give me. And he furrowed his brow and he shook his head and he said, delusion is much more fun. And I'm so grateful that he took the path of less fun in order to help me and all of us. So please raise your hand. Is that Ryodo? Okay, Ryodo.
Thank you, everyone, especially Gyoto for hosting, Shon for helping, Shishin, and everybody together helping out. I just wanted to jump in and say, Maezumi Roshi he always showed up and he was always disappearing, always there. But when he was doing something, he disappeared into the role. One time we did the morning Hakuyu-san service and we didn't have a drummer. So he jumped over in front of the drummer. No great Zen master anymore, just a drummer and a good one. I worked with him out in the garden during Samu and he disappeared and there was a gardener, just a really good gardener. And one time I was trimming the bushes in front of the Inryo. I was really being mindful, just being really so careful, just getting the bushes, just that branch just right, this one just right. And he comes over, no. He grabbed the thing and goes, ah, that looks good. Disappeared into the roll, not carrying anything. That's what I love. That's what I got from him. And thank you, everybody, for, he did always show up and he's still showing up. All of you are carrying on the legacy, which is not the details of what he did back then, but what you are doing right now.
Joan?
So I was a student, early student, and was sitting a Shishin with Maezumi. It was a summer ongo, and I was working on Mu, and I was working very hard on Mu, and so nothing was happening. I was just really focused on Mu, and nothing happened, and nothing happened. So I didn't have anything to say to Roshi, so I didn't go to Doksan with him. So after a couple of days of working on Mu and nothing happening, I was walking in the yard, and Roshi tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hogetsu, you haven't been to see me. Don't you like me anymore?" And I laughed and I said, "Oh, Roshi, I love you, but nothing's happening. I have nothing to say to you." And he says, "Oh, Hogetsu, I might have something to say to you." So I resumed going to Doksan with nothing to say.
Thank you for that, Hogetsu. Okay, I was going to ask Peter if he wanted to share anything being behind the camera from any of the photos, and perhaps something about putting those together.
That's a surprise. I'll take Joan's cue and say that I have nothing to say. But I got so much out of knowing all of you. And we really are Roshi's, we are him on earth at this time. We're his manifestation now, and it's pretty great.
Thank you, Peter. I apologize for putting you on the spot unexpectedly, but I know you can handle it. Shoen, did you want to share?
Probably have a story that everybody has. I first met Maezumi Roshi at an all-day Saturday introduction to Zen practice at ZCLA in 1975. I was 22 and I had no idea what I was doing. And Daishin Buxbazen led the session, and and it set me on a course that I'm still on. So I'm very appreciative of that. Maezumi Roshi wasn't in the whole session, but he did come to say hello and greet everyone at some point. I can't recall exactly when. But at one point he turned and looked directly at me and smiled. And I was pretty sure I was special. I was pretty sure I was very special. I've since been disabused of that notion, but it was just so personal and so wonderful because he didn't know me at all. So a small little story, but I bet everyone has that one too. So thank you.
Okay. And last call for hand raises. And Great Bow Monastery, is that chosen?
So lots of stories, but one that's particularly relevant now, I think, is at one point Maezumi Roshi was invited to a conference. I think it was in South America, in a country in South America, on environmental issues. And we had never heard him say a word about environmental issues, except the environment in here. He would always say, "Don't be up in your head, don't be up in your head." And so we were very excited that he was going to go to this conference on environmental issues. And we thought, finally, he's going to get educated and excited about environmental issues. So he goes to the conference, and then he came back, and we're all eager to know what he learned. "What did you learn, Roshi?" And he said, "Well, the conference was at a university, and there was a quadrangle surrounded by the university buildings. And he said, what I noticed is that everybody who was there on the environmental conference wouldn't walk around on the sidewalks, but just walk straight across the grassy quadrangle until it turned into a sea of mud. And so what he had noticed is up in your head and not down in your feet. And I think that's a really important lesson for us today, now that we're even more concerned about climate instability and change and our beloved Earth, is we have to first clear all the ideas out of our head and be really anchored in reality and in compassion and wisdom and compassion for people who have different views than we do. So that's one story. I'll tell you another one because I see Yoshi's here. Yoshi, so Yoshi was like this precious gift that we had from Ekkyo and Maezumi Roshi, their first child. But everybody always wanted to impress Roshi, right? So for Yoshi's first birthday, Yoshi's about, she's only a year old. She's tiny, and there was this mountain, literal mountain of presents, just gigantic mountain of presents, because everybody wanted to give Yoshi a present. And she was just bewildered by the whole thing, and she was distressed. And I was down at the Inryo, and she was kind of sitting there pulling on her hair, and Roshi said, "Yoshi, don't be neurotic." And I was so stunned because I didn't know he knew the word. I said, "Roshi, where did you learn the word neurotic?" And he just looked at me because one of his favorite things was to learn new English words and then kind of surprise us with them. Another memory is Teshin, who's here, I think, from Mexico. Teshin once was cleaning the pine house, the old in Rio, once, and he had dusted some shelves next to the staircase that went to the second floor. And there was a turntable, like a record player turntable, and he skipped going under the turntable to dust. He just thought, that's not necessary, nobody can see it. And a little while later, Roshi came down the stairs, and without even looking around, said to Teshin, "You didn't dust under the turntable." And Teshin's like the hair went up on the back of his neck. Like, how did he know that? So, you know, just lots of little stories that kind of embodied the kind of person he was, who took delight in everything that happened. And I think we all were drawn to practice with him because of the unusual kind of person he was and the unusual way he saw things. We would have meetings and he would just be silent, like committee meetings and so on, board meetings. Roshi would be silent, and we would be talking and arguing and discussing. And then at the very end, he would say something that just opened your mind to a whole different way of seeing things. And I think that's really what inspired me to practice with this person. I just was so intrigued by what was going on in his heart mind, and that made him live this different way, or see everything in a different way.
Yeah, thank you, Chosen. It's good to see you and Hogan and your bright and glowing sangha there. Really wonderful. Well, that feels like a nice place to wrap up our remembrances. So we will conclude with our 4 vows. Very grateful for all of you attending this occasion. We'll put the link out for the recording for you to share further. And I'm really happy that we were all able to spend this time together in remembrance. So we'll be using the version of the 4 vows that were created by Shishin Roshi and Shinko Roshi. And it's the link is in the chat, and Shoen has just put it in the chat if you'd like to follow along with that.
Numberless creations I vow to receive, inexhaustible delusions I vow to dissolve, omnipresent dark gates I vow to experience, unsurpassable enlightened way I vow to manifest, numberless creations I vow to receive, inexhaustible delusions I vow to dissolve, omnipresent dharma gates I vow to experience, unsurpassable enlightened way I vow to manifest, numberless creations I vow to receive, inexhaustible delusions I vow to dissolve, omnipresent dharma gates I vow to experience, unsurpassable enlightened way I vow to manifest.
This concludes our program. Thank you all for attending. Be well.